Is this thing on? We recording? Give me thumbs. Heidi, you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're back.
Welcome to the Running Chills podcast. Tonight's tale is Bumble the Clown. But first, a word from our spirited sponsors.
The Running Chills podcast is supported with generous donations from undead like you and by Raven Communications. When sending messages long distance, don't just hope for the best and put them out into the ether. Do you really want to inform others at a zombie's pace? Send a raven instead and rest in peace with confirmed delivery. Fast, simple, foreboding. Raven Communications. Enjoy our tales? These stories are available via Kindle, paperback, and even a hardcover edition. You can find all of them in Rip Graven's book, Running Chills, wherever books are sold to mortals. Interested in supporting our podcast? Visit talesbyripgraven.com to join our Patreon and receive exclusive merch, such as the Running Chills t-shirt, as well as access to a full digital issue of Haunters Monthly. You can even sign up for us to send a raven your way each time something new is unearthed in the Running Chills universe. And now, I'll turn it back to our hauntingly good host.
And may I also encourage our audience to drag their corpses over to subscribe. And now, Bumble the Clown. No respect at all.
Leroy was down on his luck. A retired rodeo clown, Leroy knew what it was to take a hit or two in his prime. But the financial blows that kept coming were beginning to weigh so heavily on his meager livelihood that Leroy wished he could have just been knocked around by a bull instead.
Financial ruin has so much in common with a bull. They both throw people without notice and can wound you fatally.
It's not that Leroy hadn't made an effort to set himself up for success once he retired. To the contrary, he had done what many would consider the right things. He invested his savings, purchased a small mobile home that he could afford on a fixed income, and had even made efforts to come out of retirement from time to time as a for-hire birthday clown. Unfortunately, the one thing Leroy had not planned on was a lawsuit. During his career, Leroy was known to guests and fans alike as a lovable comic genius in between rodeo riders. But it was during these events his real job took priority, protecting fallen riders from the dangers of a bull angry enough to kill. Leroy's brightly colored rodeo clown outfit concealed the truth of his role, distracting a bull once its rider was in serious danger, giving the rider just enough time to escape unharmed. A month before Leroy was set to retire, one such event went horribly wrong. The bull ignored the efforts of Leroy to draw attention, and instead gored a rider in a near-fatal accident. As horrifying as something like this happening under your watch could be, the real horrors waited until Leroy had finally left his rodeo clown career. The injured rider, seeking financial compensation for many months in the hospital and his lost potential earnings, decided to sue the venue holding the rodeo, the managing company providing oversight, as well as Leroy himself, about a month after Leroy had retired. These lawsuits drained Leroy of his once cushioned savings and investments. Leroy now had to choose which bills to pay in order to get through each month, and he knew it was only a matter of time before he lost his mobile home, the last remaining ounce of wealth Leroy had to his name. To stabilize himself, Leroy attempted to leave retirement and gain employment as a rodeo clown again in other areas of the country, but word had spread about the lawsuits and about the accident. Although nobody would tell Leroy to his face, they all believed hiring him at this point would be more potential trouble than it was worth, given what had happened. Outside of attempting to be re-employed at the rodeo, Leroy would entertain at birthday parties for children, trying to make a few dollars here and there. It was at one of these birthday parties that Leroy finally broke emotionally due to the financial stress he was under. The party was set for a 5:30 p.m. arrival of Bumble the Clown. There were to be at least 12 children attending, based on Miss Jacobson's estimate. Balloons and face paint would be on the menu, followed by a birthday cake and a few magic tricks that would wow children, but annoy any teenage siblings present.
I've got this,
Leroy encouraged himself as he loaded his car. The drive wasn't far. 10 minutes later, Leroy found himself at the door of your typical 3-bedroom suburban home, complete with a minivan in the driveway, a drab beige paint job of a home that looked exactly like all the rest on the block, and a live, laugh, love doormat on which Leroy now nervously stood. As soon as Leroy pressed the doorbell, you could hear kids running about the house, screaming and playing tag, or some variation of a pillow fight. The children all seemed to yell at each other, "The clown is here," as this was breaking news to all in the home. The door swung open, and a teenage girl of about 17 stood uncomfortably in the doorway.
Come on in, sir. Bumble.
She spoke as she rolled her eyes, equal parts creeped out at Leroy's appearance, and completely exhausted of the overly energetic children behind her.
Mom, the clown's here.
She yelled while swiftly closing the door behind Leroy as he stepped inside.
Heather, please have him see me in the kitchen, and quickly.
Miss Jacobson was everything you would imagine a strung-out, superficial person trying to play the perfect mom on the internet would be. Miss Jacobson supposedly ran some sort of online mommy blog that had garnered enough attention to land her spots on the local TV stations as a guest, providing parenting advice and do-it-yourself activity tips. To many in the community, she represented parenting done right. In real life, away from the internet and cameras, she was an overwhelmed and irritably impatient person. Ironically, her real name was Karen. Miss Jacobson glared at Leroy as he headed down the hall toward the kitchen. As Leroy walked to meet her, he glanced over toward the other room. The room contained seemingly out-of-control children.
I can't believe you didn't come earlier to start entertaining at 5:30 exactly. How long will this take to get going?
Her name really is Karen. How fitting.
Leroy chuckled to himself at how sometimes the universe provides the best punchlines by chance.
Bumble the Clown, ready to bring the laughs to a rumble and your frown to a tumble.
Leroy cheeringly quipped, extending Miss Jacobson his hand. Miss Jacobson scoffed and ignored the gesture, opting instead to yell at the children to quiet down. The party went about as you would expect. The balloons were received well, minus a few teen friends of Heather's comparing balloon swords to deflated penises. The face painting was popular enough, except for Leroy's lack of talent in painting the perfect unicorn, thus causing a very young attendee to cry enough to be taken home early. The birthday cake wasn't made with the correct buttercream icing, per Mrs. Jacobson, and eventually the cake ended up being a food fight between the children. The magic tricks contained the children's attention spans for a whole 7 minutes, until the horde were off to the backyard to play. The teens cracked snide jokes about Bumble as they came and went with their refreshments, and the tired parents basked in the glory of preoccupied children while they caught a moment together without them. Miss Jacobson was scrubbing one of her dining chairs furiously, trying in vain to remove the sticky post-food fight residue from her dining set. Leroy began packing up his props, preparing for the awkward exchange that would follow, as he had yet to be paid. Once fully packed, Leroy cautiously approached Miss Jacobson, as she was clearly irritated.
It was a pleasure to entertain your guests on this special birthday for your son. I hope I helped create wonderful memories for your family, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity.
As Leroy spoke, Miss Jacobson never glanced in his direction or made an effort to acknowledge him.
I'm about to head home. Do you happen to have my fee for today?
Leroy asked. Miss Jacobson scowled.
Your fee? You are lucky to get any business at all. By my count, you were late to the party, not as funny as we expected, less than talented when it comes to balloon animals or face paint, and you couldn't bother to assist with preventing the children from throwing their food around? You couldn't even keep their attention doing magic for more than 10 minutes. You are pathetic. I heard the story of how you couldn't even keep bulls entertained. I assumed at the very least you could manage some children. You can't even do that, can you? I plan on not only telling others in the community about this experience, but I'll make sure you are never booked for another children's event in this town. You have my word.
At that, Miss Jacobson tossed the check at Leroy and loudly demanded he leave her home in front of all the guests. As Leroy exited the Jacobson home, shocked and confused, he heard the woman apologizing for the worst birthday entertainment ever, while others in the home laughed. Embarrassed, exhausted, broken, Leroy put his bags into his trunk and then slumped down into his older mid-sized sedan, defeated and filled with hopelessness. All he had done was attempt to share joy with children while making just enough to get by, and as thanks, the universe saw fit to punish him with a public humiliation by the most influential mommy blogger in the community. A lone tear welled up in Leroy's right eye, and as he wiped it away, the tear created a streak in his face paint. Leroy looked down at the check Miss Jacobson had written him. The amount was nearly half what they had agreed upon. In the notes area of the check, Miss Jacobson wrote,
You were half as useful as I thought.
Leroy laid his head back against the headrest of his seat and glanced back at the Jacobson home through his window.
What am I going to do so I can make it another month?
The wind gusted at that moment enough to cause a small card tucked underneath his wiper blade to waver in the wind, a detail Leroy had not noticed until now. With a few quick movements, he opened the door, snatched the card, and closed the door again. Upon further inspection, the card read, Quit clowning around. Professional gesture placement services. From Mary Andrews to Common Fools. We help put a smile on your career opportunities.
What an odd business card. Is this a prank?
Leroy wondered if this was the work of one of the teenagers who attended the Jacobson birthday party.
No respect at all.
Leroy tore the card in half, then proceeded to drive away. That night, Leroy had troubled dreams. Crushing debt, the rodeo accident, teenagers laughing, all combined with a Machiavellian speech about talent from one Mrs. Jacobson. Leroy woke with a jolt in a pool of his own sweat. The air was stuffy and hot. It appeared that his small air conditioning unit had finally bitten the dust.
Figures.
Leroy thought to himself.
There is no way I can afford to replace it.
Leroy moved to the living room, turned on a fan, and sat in his recliner watching the morning news. Around 9 a.m. a phone call came in, shattering the solitude of the morning with a low rumble of vibrations from where his phone rested on the coffee table.
Hello?
Leroy answered.
Who is this?
Hi, my name is Darcene with Professional Gesture Placement Services. I'm looking to speak with Leroy. Is now a good time?
Speaking. Sure. How did you get my number?
Oh, we've had our eyes now. We know of the tragic incident at the rodeo, and while that's been a major loss for the rodeo, we see it as an opportunity to recruit fantastic talent that might be undervalued, such as yourself. You can do so much better than being an average clown for hire. We have a potential set of contracting opportunities coming up and feel you would be perfect. And of course, we pay handsomely. Our clients always pay us well for top-tier performers. Are you interested?
I don't know what to say.
Leroy was nearly speechless due to being so flattered.
I didn't know my career had been so well known, or that someone of my talents would be in demand enough for a recruitment call.
Oh, yes. We can use all the help we can get. We're juggling lots of entertaining opportunities, pun intended, and we can't keep enough positions filled due to demand. Today is your lucky day.
Leroy was impressed.
Okay, I'm in. What would the next steps look like?
The two spoke at length of details and arranged an interview. The interview would provide a chance to meet other clowns in their employment, taking the form of an in-person opportunity to showcase Leroy's skills during a paid event. This initial gig would act as a trial employment, and if all went satisfactory, there would be a bonus fee structure and a permanent scheduling of events Leroy would be able to work indefinitely going forward.
At last,
Leroy thought.
some stable income and a future beyond the rodeo.
The days leading up to the trial and interview flew past for Leroy. Pulling out all the stops, not to mention blowing his budget, Leroy invested in a premium set of face paint supplies, as well as an upgraded pair of cowboy boots for Bumble's clown outfit. Arriving 10 minutes early, Leroy parked next to what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse in the old industrial district of the city.
GPS says this must be it. I hope this is for real, not some gimmick.
Leroy glanced around nervously, noting trash blowing through the parking lot, not unlike apocalyptic tumbleweeds. Stepping out of his car, Leroy caught a glimpse of what used to call this warehouse home back in its heyday. The words, Delphire Optics Manufacturing, were rotting away from the side of the brick and metal exterior, paired with a previously colorful, now drab, caricature of a smiling magician holding a box.
Well, hello there, friend.
Arose a booming voice from directly behind Leroy. Leroy jumped a bit as he turned around, clearly startled by the unexpected proximity of the voice. Before him was a clown dressed in Victorian-era clothing, complete with coat tails, a top hat, and a cane.
The name's Vance. Vance the Victorian.
The clown announced and stuck out his hand for a greeting shake.
And you must be Bumble the rodeo clown.
Yours truly.
Leroy met Vance's hand for the greeting. Immediately a shock went up Leroy's arm, painful enough for him to accidentally curse out loud.
Ha ha ha. It's not every day you meet a humble Bumble.
Vance grinned and then displayed the buzzer hidden in his right hand as the source of the shocking exchange.
Forgive my juvenile introduction. Shall we be off to meet with the others?
Leroy nodded, a bit shaken by the prank, but otherwise intact. As the pair walked around the far side of the building exterior, they came across a newer van with some modifications that had been themed as a clown car. Vance pointed as two more clowns joined them in the vehicle.
May I introduce Mary the Mentalist and Sledgehammer Sam?
Mary's clown outfit seemed to be themed around a crazy lab doctor, while Sam's was more of a sledgehammer meets mime affair. The parties exchanged pleasantries and then began to load themselves into the van. Leroy turned back toward his vehicle.
Oh, I need to grab props for the event.
You won't need them. We need to get going right now or we'll miss our moment. You'll not be doing your normal routine tonight. This event requires a group performance.
Leroy turned, his posture reflecting his confusion.
Should I have prepared anything? Did I miss some communication for the plans for tonight?
Mary broke in, clearly ready to get on the road.
Improvisation. This is a test of your abilities tonight. Consider adaptation and flexibility to be part of the gig.
Sam and Vance enthusiastically nodded in agreement. Once all four clowns were seated in the vehicle, they were on their way. It was starting to get dark, and Leroy wondered what type of event he would be performing at. He spent much of the drive reassuring himself that he was ready for whatever comic genius would be required of him for entertainment purposes. Vance leaned toward Bumble and in a low voice began explaining what the night entailed. A client had hired the team to surprise a few guests with an inspiring message. The night would include a surprise entrance to a gathering, and then the performance of some sleight-of-hand magic for entertainment. Finally, they would be required to deliver the client's well wishes and capture the guests' reactions for social media. Leroy mulled over these details.
It seems straightforward enough, although a bit hokey for the typical corporate get-together. Entertaining adults is a bit difficult, especially when they don't expect you. But pay is pay, I guess. I'm not complaining.
You know how to do a quick card trick, don't you?
Vance asked Bumble.
Absolutely.
Vance continued, handing Leroy a custom deck of cards.
We need you to take this deck, and whatever happens, we need the volunteer to draw the Queen of Hearts. They should sign the card or something like that to add the full trick effect. Have them put it back in the deck, do your thing, and make sure they get it back.
Will do. Pretty easy trick.
That's what I want to hear from our newest talent, Bumble.
Vance then looked out the window.
We're almost at the location. Now, here's where things get a little fun. The guests will be leaving dinner and walking through the shopping district, totally unsuspecting. The volunteer for the magic trick needs to be a specific young woman. You'll recognize her because she'll be wearing a blue dress with a butterfly necklace, and she'll be near the main fountain. This individual is the whole reason for the celebration today, and our client really wants to make sure her day is extra special. You'll walk up, offer up the magic trick posing as a street performer, then come back to our van. We have our own similar roles to play as entertainers, and then, once the surprise is over, we'll pack it up and call it a night. Super short and simple, and the client will be really delighted.
That's it?
Leroy asked in disbelief.
Yep-a-roo!
Joked Vance.
Now go rope yourself the young lady we are to entertain.
Leroy began walking from the parking garage where the clown car was parked and headed to the outdoor strip mall where he could find the guests he was tasked with entertaining. The night was warm. Lights were strung between the various shops, illuminating the walkways and happy passerby. Couples on dates, teenagers out having a good time and catching a movie, a night out for friends shopping together. Leroy noted that although it was warm and humid this evening, there was a sweet smell in the air.
What an odd gig on such a wonderful evening.
As Leroy continued toward the main fountain, he would wave at various groups strolling by with children that made positive eye contact.
Making people happy is why I became a clown.
This evening's walk among the shoppers while in costume as Bumble was reigniting his passion and love for why he chose this profession in the first place. The fountain wasn't too far from the parking garage and was located in the center of the shopping district. Various restaurants surrounded it, with multiple shopping corridors extending from the main fountain area, not unlike the spokes of a wheel. Stone angels sat atop the fountain, attempting to empty their stoneware of water contents into the pool below, a task that seemed to never reach its conclusion. Multiple groups stood around the fountain, some taking photos, others basking in the fun of the evening. Leroy searched the crowds in the area until he spotted a young woman wearing a blue dress. She was accompanied by two young men, one wearing a varsity jacket and the other a pair of sunglasses, despite the dark hour, combined with a fashionable denim jacket. Leroy put himself into character for the upcoming introduction. As he approached, Leroy assessed that this crowd would be more of the teenage range.
May I ask what the special occasion is today?
The three individuals turned to see the odd figure of Bumble the rodeo clown, colorful boots and all.
Oh my god.
The young man in the varsity jacket cackled toward the young woman in the blue dress.
Did your mom hire that awful clown from your little brother's party to ruin our day to the formal? Shit, you're not joking. It's the same guy. But he has flashier boots now.
the sunglass-wearing teen added, smirking. Leroy was speechless for a moment, realizing that the young girl in the blue dress wearing a butterfly necklace was, in fact, Miss Jacobson's teen daughter, Heather.
How could this be?
Leroy started to panic.
Have I been set up or pranked myself?
Is that you, Bumble? Did my mom put you up to this?
Heather asked in an equally irritated and astonished tone. Realizing that he was more than likely being watched and could miss his employment opportunity if he messed this interaction up, Leroy played along.
I'm unsure who wanted to make this day so special. Rather than concern ourselves with that, my job is to delight you with a little magic trick this evening. Would you kindly draw a card? Any card.
With a flick of his wrist, Leroy produced the special deck of cards that Vance had provided him. Ensuring the card Heather drew was the Queen of Hearts, Bumble allowed her to take the card and show it to her companions without revealing the card to him, although he already knew what she held. Heather looked at both her friends and then giggled as she wrote something privately on the card. She showed the writing to both the young men, each laughing and shoving each other as they were shown the card. Heather then placed the card face down back into the deck, confident that what was coming would be well worth the wait.
All right, let's find that card,
Leroy hollered, gaining a bit of audience as others from the fountain came walking up to see what all the fuss was about. Leroy then executed a couple of trademark Bumble card shuffles, even the one where he made part of the deck pop up from one hand into the other before a shower of cards were intermixed and then cut by his left hand. Bumble was known in earlier days for his smooth sleight of hand, and he poured his years of polish into this moment.
Okay, is this your card?
Leroy asked, flipping over the top card to reveal a 6 of clubs.
Not even close.
Heather scoffed, beginning to grow tired of the moment, ready to move on with her evening. Bumble the Clown then executed another shuffle, and then another card reveal, with the same result.
That doesn't seem right.
Bumble then clasped the deck in both hands and shook it rigorously. Approaching the denim and sunglasses teen, Bumble announced,
I give up. Can you please find the card?
Sure thing, cowboy.
Heather's all-too-cool companion searched the deck backwards and forwards, but to no avail.
It's not in here.
The young man griped, showcasing a spread of the cards to both Heather and her date.
This trick blows,
Heather's date in the varsity jacket replied. Bumble motioned toward the young athlete's pants pocket.
Check your wallet. Maybe you'll find what we're looking for there.
Reluctant at first, the crowd had gathered in such a way that there was immense pressure on the young man to play along. In addition to cheers from the crowd, even Heather's interest at this point had peaked. Not wanting to seem like a chicken, the young man quickly produced his wallet and opened it. Unbelievably, seated between the cash he planned to use for tips as their night unfolded, was a solitary playing card. Pulling it from his wallet, and to the amazement of the crowd, as well as Heather, he covertly showed it to her, and she immediately confirmed that the card was indeed her card. The crowd roared with applause and excitement at the moment, all three companions in disbelief.
Now reveal your card to the audience so they can see your signed card,
Bumble instructed. Heather crossed her arms and changed her posture, leaning back on one heel as she raised her right arm and then held the card up, the card back facing everyone. She rotated the card to reveal its face, and sure enough, it was the Queen of Hearts. Unfortunately for Leroy, this joyful moment was cut short, as both he and everyone in the audience could hear Heather read aloud what she wrote on the card. In big letters diagonally across the card, Heather had written,
Bumble the Clown fumbles with children.
The audience roared with laughter. Parents quickly ushered their kids away from the gathered crowd, desiring their children not to catch on to what was being inferred. Teens documented this moment with their phones on social media. Many snickered and kept their distance from Leroy as the moment began to pass.
Fantastic parting gift.
Heather said as she tucked the playing card into her clutch.
Excellent entertainment value as well.
She smirked, turning to follow the two young men now walking away. Leroy was devastated, humiliated. Everything in him felt like he was sinking like a stone.
I could just drown right now in this fountain. That would end it.
Leroy began making his way back to the parking garage, consumed by his thoughts. Unsure of how he was going to explain tonight's events to his new employer, Leroy began resigning himself to what would undoubtedly be his fate: a lack of passing this initial trial and the continued financial burdens that would ensue. As Leroy lifted his head, he realized that he had made it all the way back to the garage. He took the immediate set of stairs to the right and ended up on the second floor of the parking structure where the van was parked. Nobody was around in the parking structure. Thankfully, the van had been left unlocked, so Leroy opened the door, seated himself in the vehicle, and then closed the door. Leroy checked his phone to see if any further communications had come from the team for the night. Just at that moment, Leroy heard familiar laughs echo through the garage. As Leroy looked up from his phone, he watched as Heather and her two companions walked toward their parked truck and unlocked it, disabling the vehicle's alarm. None of the teens had noticed the clown-themed van, or Bumble, sitting in the front of the vehicle, just feet away. As Heather's date opened the driver's side door to his truck, the door was slammed shut by Mary, who was staring at him with a hollow gaze. Mary had his other hand in one of his lab coat pockets and quickly rushed forward, pulling a knife from his pocket and plunging it repetitively into the soft exterior of the jock's varsity jacket. The young man made a disturbing sucking noise as his lungs were clearly punctured and his blood began soaking the jacket he so idolized. As the athlete fell to the ground, eyes filled with terror, gasping his last breaths, Heather screamed and fell to her knees. Her sunglass-sporting friend grabbed Heather by the shoulder and pulled her back, trying to collect her for an attempted sprint to safety. Mary smiled, holding the bloody knife up, and with a flaming flash, the knife became a red rose, one which was tossed at Heather's feet. Leroy, in a state of shock and panic himself, jumped out of the van.
Get out of here! Run!
Leroy shouted. The remaining two teens were terrified by the appearance of Bumble the clown, and momentarily forgot about Mary behind them as they faced Bumble in front of the clown car. It was at this moment that Mary produced a yo-yo and did a small cradle trick before whipping the toy around the remaining young man's neck. Heather turned to bolt away just as Leroy charged in to help. Heather used her clutch as a whip and hit Leroy squarely in the groin, wrongly perceiving him as a threat. Leroy fell to the ground quickly while crying out loud.
I'm trying to help!
Heather bolted down the row of cars, screaming all the way. She had made it almost to the stairs when a cane popped out from behind a vehicle and tripped her, causing her to hit her head on the pavement.
The entertainment is not over yet, young lady,
Vance announced gleefully as he arose from his hiding spot, his cane in one hand, a phone recording in the other. Vance quickly moved between Heather and the stairs, creating a blockade of her exit strategy. Heather rose slightly disoriented from the fall, blood dripping down from her forehead. As her eyes darted around the garage looking for an escape, she spotted the elevator to her left and began a dash toward it.
Ah, good, a bit of sport.
Vance laughed as he continued recording with one hand while tossing his cane with the other. Vance used his one free hand to pull an old-fashioned revolver from his Victorian coat and waved it wildly towards Heather, then began firing. Leroy had barely gathered himself and stood up during all of this when Mary approached him, holding a gun withdrawn from his other pocket.
Great job improvising, Bumble. Her friend would have been a tad more difficult had you not distracted him.
Mary glanced at the chaos evolving with Vance and Heather and told Bumble to stay put, motioning with his pistol for emphasis.
Don't want the new recruit making a rookie mistake. You need a little more training first.
Leroy glanced back at Heather and Vance, unable to help and in a state of shock at what was unfolding before him. Vance fired his revolver multiple times all around Heather, as if he was intentionally trying to miss her with his bullets. Heather reached the elevator crying, mashing the button endlessly, hoping for safety.
And what is behind door number 1?
Vance joyfully announced, dropping his revolver and grabbing his top hat while dancing toward Heather's location. When the parking garage elevator doors opened, Heather wasn't sure which she recognized first. The mime or the silver glint of an axe the clown swung down through the opening doors at her. As horror filled Heather's eyes, Sam's axe landed directly into her chest cavity with a disturbing sound. Vance and Mary shouted with applause.
Here, here.
Good job, Sam.
Woo! Oh, yeah!
Heather sank to the concrete pavement with an axe embedded in her chest. As she lay bleeding out and dying, her last memory was that of a mime's shoes and an old piece of gum from weeks before, most likely discarded and stepped on until it became a permanent fixture of the parking garage floor. Leroy let out a soft cry, a broken man in all but decency. This moment, he knew must be his last. There was no way he would live to tell this tale. These clowns would surely kill him and frame him to blame for the carnage of this night. Even if he did survive this night of evil laughter, no police officer in their right mind would seek to uncover his innocence. His life, career, and world at this point were forfeit. Mary smiled and waited quietly as Vance and Sam made their way to join them.
Oh, why so glum?
Vance sarcastically questioned as he pointed the still filming smartphone in Bumble's direction.
The clown of the hour, Bumble. Only the best entertainment for our clients.
Why? Why me? Why them? Why this?
He doesn't get it. Please spell it out for him.
Mary sighed, rubbing his painted forehead.
Oh, all right.
Vance quipped, stopping the recording on his phone and pocketing the device.
Our client hired us for their entertainment. We all performed exactly as expected.
Vance then paused to raise an eyebrow.
Some even better than expected. Our client wanted to make it clear the clown profession should be respected, and that anyone publicly attacking our line of work must face the most serious of consequences. The loss of Miss Jacobson's daughter drives that point home pretty clearly now, wouldn't you say?
You're all monsters!
Leroy shouted, tears welling up in his eyes.
Indeed. We are all monsters, magicians, maniacs, and jokers. All true and valid perspectives. While some clowns delight, some clowns fright. But either way, we always entertain. Nobody ever walks away from us without experiencing the highest art form performance. The act of a fool.
While Vance was orating his perspective on the profession of clowning, Leroy was planning his escape.
Too many guns and weapons present. Can't overpower them. Can't outrun them here. Best opportunity would be to take my chances jumping over the edge of the parking garage. I'll take my odds landing in public view. Maybe I can get these homicidal fools locked away once I'm in custody and can tell all I know. A life in prison is still life. To the edge of the garage. Now!
Leroy ran from the very startled three clown companions, clearly caught off guard that Bumble would attempt an escape after the killer talents displayed moments earlier. Mary raised his handgun at Leroy as he ran, but Vance put his hand over Mary's raised arm, telling him to
cool it.
Vance shouted at Leroy.
Bumble, where exactly do you think you can go that we can't reach you? You passed the interview. Your financial troubles are over.
Leroy made it to the ledge and threw all his weight into hopping over the side. Leroy was witnessed in security footage landing on the pavement just outside the parking garage as a driver rounded the corner and accidentally hit him. The driver noted in the police report that he was shocked to find a random clown diving into the road from above. Other than footage of Leroy's jump, no evidence of foul play, security footage from the garage, or witnesses could shed light on the events of that night. The three teens were never found, and despite a community campaign to find them, it was as if they had just disappeared. Police even had the teens' truck search for prints, but to no avail. The authorities eagerly awaited a discussion with Leroy as to the events of that evening, but as the days passed, Leroy remained in a coma, and his health continued to deteriorate. It was about a month after the events of that violent night when Leroy passed away. Nurses found nothing out of the ordinary about Leroy's passing, save one playing card tucked into his bedsheets. It was a Joker card. The day after Leroy passed, Miss Jacobson received a suspicious envelope. In the envelope was a bloody butterfly necklace, a Queen of Hearts playing card, and a photo of Heather's clearly deceased face, wearing the red nose of a clown.
Just dying to read more? Running Chills. Available now at talesbyripgraven.com.
The Running Chills podcast is written, produced, and recorded by Rip Graven. Do not blame Igor. I was never consulted. Spirited voiceover introduction by the talented David Lambert. Heidi is voiced by the wonderful Stephanie Graven. Returning this episode as both Miss Jacobson and Darcine, the delightful Emily Tim. And new cast members. Bumble the Clown, voiced by Patrick Paul. Giving exceptional performance as Heather, we have Charlotte Paul. Side note, what a way to die. Okay, moving on. Heather's friends, played by Alex Kim. Our tales and various voiceovers are read and performed by the author himself, Rip Graven. Igor does his own voice. Do not even try to take credit, Graven. Do not do it.
The Running Chills podcast is based on Rip Graven's book, Running Chills. For more information, please visit talesbyripgraven.com. Copyright 2024, Rip Graven, all rights reserved. Reproduction of these stories or use of our tales without express permission in any manner is prohibited.
We see you in our next episode. Sometime. Don't rush us. We take our time. But you know you like.
Thank you for listening.
And now presenting Igor's Outtakes, the part of the show where we show you the things we messed up, mistakes were made, we cut them, then we bring them back. Why do we bring them back? Graven, what's going on? Give me Barbie trying to act like a scary story teller.
Okay.
Like Barbie telling a scary story around a campfire.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. Fast, simple, foreboding.
It's not every day you meet a humble bumble. So do that in Lawrence's accent. That was a little more
Southern.
not every day you meet a humble bumble. Anyway.
I can't believe you didn't come earlier to start entertaining at 5:30 exactly. How long will this take to get going?
Sorry.
Oh no, how does this one go? Oh my god. No, that's totally different now. I forgot what he sounds like.
Improvisation. This is a test of your abilities tonight. No, that's not right. We're not doing that. We ain't going back to the train. What that, Jack? You must have found too much of the whiskey.
Do Michael Jackson.
You want Michael Jackson? Improvisation! Oh, God. It'd be like, what is that 80s guy in the Despicable Me? Where he's like, and he like dances around. No, we're not going to do that. Yeah, Mary, I always considered was going to be like a bass voice. I never was like, improvisation!
Oh, no worries.
One thing you may not be cognizant of
Yeah.
is as you're reading the line, you were wrestling the page.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
So
You're right. I picked it up. I was like, my name is Darcene. Okay.
Darcene needs a nicotine.
Darcene does.
Let's get Darcene some shit.
She needs a Newport Light. Oh my God, no, a Virginia Slim.
Darcene has been in the cubicle for far too long. Okay, so.
Please! Yeah?
Don't want the new recruit making a rookie mistake. You need a little more training first. I'm Batman. Sorry.
What do you mean, cut up? It's too good. Pack it up, pack it in, let me begin. I came to win by all means, that's a sin.
Improvisation. This is a test of your abilities tonight. Consider adaptation and flexibility to be part of the gig. Improvisation. One time in Grenada. Mosquito. Firefly. Flamethrower.
Leroy was witnessed in security footage landing on the pavement just outside the parking garage as a driver rounded the corner.
Sorry.
Okay.
It was a perfect take, too.
Leroy was witnessed in security footage landing on a phone that he left on during a recording session, just as Rip Graven beat him over the head with a chair.
To the edge of the garage. Now!
And then Bumble jumps from the edge of the garage with a fart. Bro, that was great. Okay, that's a wrap. Hey!
And this has been another edition of Igor's Outtakes. I hope you can sleep after